The Albanese government's big roundtable, meanwhile, on how to kickstart this country's pretty anaemic economy, just ended day two with still more nothing, or nothing that anyone can tell because, unbelievably, cameras and journalists have been banned. But there have been some very good ideas from outside that roundtable, ideas the government doesn't want to hear. Now, first, former Reserve Bank Governor very interestingly said the government had lost spending restraint.
COVID came and
blew everything away.
We had to spend, and then we haven't, after COVID, we haven't really got back to kind of a clearly articulated framework for decision making with fiscal policy. It seems to be, well, if there's a need, we'll spend. And for a while, that's okay, but we shouldn't be in that world forever. And as we've come out of COVID in pretty good circumstances, I think it's now time for the government to reimpose some discipline on.
And the Alternative Summit, today organised by National Senator Matt Canavan, a summit that is open to the public, in fact it's been broadcast on Sky News Extra, honed in on the government's disastrous crusade for green energy.
Low-cost energy has traditionally played an important role in offsetting the detrimental impact on industry performance. Not only is it no longer possible for energy to play this role, this will inhibit innovation, job creation and growth.
Freeing ourselves from the pointless economic straitjacket of net zero and unlocking the supply potential of our economy. Growth is deliberately constrained under the rallying cry of net zero. You ration emissions, you ration growth. Joining
me is the panel, Leith Valoncelin, co-founder of Macro Business and a former Federal Treasury official, and Michael Costa, former New South Wales Labor Treasurer. Michael, the picture we're getting from experts outside the government summit, too much spending, crazy green policies, driving power prices too high. Does that seem to be a message the government should actually hear?
Oh, it's a message they won't hear because, as I've said on many occasions, their DNA is, their economic DNA is around taxing and spending and wasting money. Look, it's good that they're not letting the public into that because what I see there is fully paid up members of the old IR club. You know, you've got the unions in there that represent 8% of the population of the private sector workforce, and you've even got the business groups that represent even less of the business community. And all the policy advisors, you look around that table, as you can see on the screen, they've been around for years, you know, and they're fully paid up members of the Net Zero Club. Look, the solution to this, of course, is not rocket science. Any decent economist and any decent follower of public policy knows what's required to get productivity. The problem is this government can't even define productivity, has no agenda in relation to doing anything, and worse still, is doing everything in its first term it did, actually has made the situation worse. As I've said on many occasions, they re-regulated the labour market, which reduced labour productivity. They increased, waste and costs, and increased that through subsidies to renewables and the net zero dream. As well as that, you've got tax reform. They don't understand it. There's no discussion about tax indexation, which is absolutely critical to get incentive back into the economy. In fact, all they're looking at, as far as I can see, Andrew, is a way to get some sort of cover for some very short, quick tax increases to do some minor budget repair. I think it's a farce, the whole thing. And, I expect nothing more out of this government than we got in the last term, and that's more tax, spend and waste.
Leith Valoncelin, can you give me more optimism than that?
No, not really. I think, Andrew, this productivity summit's going to fail because it hasn't bothered to discuss the two key areas that are contributing most to our decline in living standards and productivity. And that's that Australia's running an excessively high, poorly targeted and low-skilled migration system that is basically crush-loading everything, housing, infrastructure, business investment, and as a result, our living standards are going down, not up, and productivity growth is falling because of basically a capital shallow in this country. We're not providing all the millions of extra workers with tools and machinery and enough infrastructure, so your productivity goes down. The other area is we've got soaring energy costs, as Gary Banks just said, due to our idiotic net zero policies and the failure to reserve gas on the East Coast to give ourselves cheap gas. I find it extraordinary that we export 7 times more coal to the rest of the world than we burn ourselves. We export 4 times more gas. We're sitting on 30% of the world's uranium, but we're denying ourselves the opportunity to actually use those hydrocarbon resources to give ourselves cheap and reliable energy, which would then make manufacturing competitive. It would ease costs across the entire supply chain and would make us more productive as an economy. But instead, we're going the opposite way. We're going hell-bent on net zero, and we're going to drive up energy costs and drive down our living standards and productivity. It's that simple.
It's incredible. It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, some of those bans you're talking about, they're just essentially just religious taboos. There's nothing scientific about it. They're religious taboos. I mean, it's so primitive. Can you tell me, Michael, why it would be that the government has been dodging arguments on all 3 points? I mean, if it wants good ideas, these are good ideas. I mean, why no argument at this summit, I believe too, having a look at the agenda papers?
Well, they don't want reform, Andrew. I mean, Anthony Albo is from the socialist left. He opposed every single reform of the Hawke-Keating government. Financial deregulation, labour market deregulation, product market reforms, the microeconomic reform agenda, and the privatisation. He opposed all of that. He hasn't changed. And unfortunately, the Treasurer, he might be an expert or have a PhD in Paul Keating's politics, but he doesn't understand his economics and the consequences of those economics for our long-term productivity and wealth. And unfortunately, that's what we're facing. So what I think they're looking for is they know they've got a problem with the budget. They know that they need to increase taxes because they're never going to reduce spending. In fact, they're increasing spending as we speak. They're picking winners, which was, we've seen with that silly fund, future made in China. Quantum computers and all this nonsense. And what are we facing? We're facing a situation where, debt of $1 trillion, government spending deficits are at record levels, NDIS about to, destroy all of the public sector's ability to fund anything if it's not reformed. Some minor reforms mentioned today, but nothing of substance. So, look, it's just window dressing.
Just on the NDIS. Just on the NDIS, I thought it was bizarre. The Health Minister, Leith, was saying, big reform. We're going to take autism, people with autism, and that's a huge growth industry there. We're going to take them out of the NDIS, which is all very well, but they're still being funded. They'll be funded with a different thing. We're still facing the same problems. Why doesn't the government want to hear the truth about what's going on?
Yeah, look, I think the major problem with the NDIS is we've basically allowed, a whole bunch of middlemen and shonks and everyone else to basically, rot it. And we're also obviously handing assistance out to people who are marginal disabled, not seriously disabled. And because of that, the program's blown out to about $50 billion a year, and the Parliamentary Budget Office warns that within a decade it could be $100 billion. So, it's obviously unsustainable, and it needs to be reined in, and it needs to target people who are genuinely disabled in the most cost-effective manner, not this sort of blanket approach where, we have middlemen and shonks basically, becoming millionaires off it at our expense.
I cannot believe this country is so unhealthy that 1 in 35 of us has a permanent and serious disability. I cannot believe it. Leith Van Onselen, Michael Costa, thank you very much to you both.